MSOM 612, Lesson 5 recap, Lesson 6 preview coming to you today from the Miller Tree Inn Bed and Breakfast in Forks, Washington. As you recall, last week I was at the Rialto Beach in La Push and the Forks area of Washington and talked to you a little bit about Twilight. So I wanted to bring to you today the foremost expert in our family about Twilight, my wife, Jill. Now, Jill is here at the Miller Tree Inn doing what's called inn sitting. In case any of you have ever gone to a bed and breakfast or a country inn and met the owners and wondered what in the world do they do when they want to go on vacation? Do they just close down? Well, many of them hire what are called inn sitters, and the inn sitter will come in and run their property for them just like they do when they're there. And so Jill will come in, cook breakfast, manage the staff, take reservations, all those things that a innkeeper does, and I follow her around and try not to get in the way. And so Jill's, I start to say ill. Jill's been coming here for, gosh, I don't know, 10 years or so, and knows a lot about Forks and the little town that could. It's a town of about 3,000 people who have really connected and leveraged this story of Twilight. So I thought I'd have her explain a little bit about Twilight and Forks.
Okay, great. My first disclaimer is that I spend about probably 8 weeks a year here doing interim innkeeping for the Miller Tree Inn. Therefore, I have to know about Twilight. I'm not necessarily a rabid fan, but I know a lot about it because I'm at the Cullen House. Just wanted to clarify that. Anyway, I've been coming here since about 2005. Not only do I do interim innkeeping, but I've been inspecting out here in Forks for that long. And I've seen a big change in Forks as well as the businesses here and this business with the advent of Twilight. Stephanie Meyer wrote those books, never having been here, but she Googled what place has the least amount of sunlight and most rain in the United States, and that would be Forks. That's right where we are. She did that because, of course, as we all know, vampires can't have a lot of sunlight. They don't do well in sunlight, so she set the books in Forks. Now, what happened, Forks really ramped up for the movies to be filmed here. Once the books came out, they decided to do the movie. People were coming to Forks, and they decided to go ahead and film. Washington State at that point made it prohibitively expensive to film within Washington. So not 1 inch of film is done anywhere in Washington State. It's all done in either Vancouver, British Columbia, or down in Portland, Oregon. Well, here's Forks. They had spent money. The businesses had gotten ready. They'd spent some money on infrastructure to get ready for the filming crews and people to come, and they were disappointed. So they had to do something. And I believe this little town really made lemonade out of lemons. They got together and they decided they would be Forks because they were. They were the Forks of the books, and those people who read the books want to come see what Stephanie Meyer wrote about. So they got together and they assigned spots in town to be sites from the book. Consequently, this is the only home that has a large wraparound porch, and it's a big white farmhouse, so it became the Cullen House. And if you've ever read the books or seen the movies, this is like the center point of the books. So this place became very popular. Prior to Twilight, really the guests they had were fishermen and outdoorsmen, as well as people going to the Olympic National Park. And those books changed everything. And they've been very busy for the last 10 years. Now, things have certainly slowed down. But what I think is interesting is that first, this businessman took a lot of the money that he made and invested it in his property. He's upgraded his rooms. He added new rooms. They've changed a lot of things. So it's always been a nice place to stay, but it's a much nicer place to stay now because he's invested that money back into his business. And this is just my opinion, so I want to tell you, don't cite this or anything because he really doesn't like opinions. So just
supported opinions.
Yeah, it's not even supported. Just my opinion. But really what I think Forks has done is they've taken the money they've made with, we're talking thousands and thousands of visitors that come here. And they've invested that back into Forks. They've built a really great website, and they've done a good job telling people that they are the one town in the center of the Olympic National Park. So now there are less Twilight visitors, but we get visitors from all over the world coming to see the Olympic National Park to do hiking and outdoors types things. And I think Forks is really invested in its future in that way.
Cool. Well, before you go, I don't know if you all see this right behind me, but there's this mortar boards that are back behind me in this big display. What's the story with those?
With those? Okay. If anybody who has read Twilight or seen the movies understands that they're vampires, so they don't age. So you have Dr. Cullen and his wife, and they have like 4 kids. They're not really their kids, they're all vampires. But since vampires don't age, they move to a town, and the kids are like high school, college age. And so they go to high school. Well, they graduate and they get a mortarboard. They get a little hat and they keep it. And once they've all graduated, they have to move because they don't age. So they just keep going to high school over and over and over again. That's the story. So
Well, just think about this. If it was if it happened to be a college thing, you could be taking this class over and over and over again. So
that's okay.
pretty cool thought there, huh?
Yeah,
Thank you, sweetie.
no problem.
Well, I hope you appreciate that little diversion today. I want to talk a little bit about lesson 5. And again, the great thing about Forks is it really focuses on what an organization, what a local group of people can do, rather than just punt. And we talked a lot about sustainability in lesson 4 and lesson 5, and this course is actually entitled Sustainability. So you begin to think about what are some ways that Forks was able to not only sustain itself through that process, and they've done a great job. And again, small businesses, bully for them. I absolutely love it because they're going for it all the time. So lesson 5. The discussion question this week talked about evaluating different opportunities and looking at the opportunity cost associated with those things. And again, there are some great comments. I've already read some this week as it relates to opportunity cost, and that's always something that you need to consider, because as you're putting together your course project, and as the companies get larger, you obviously have more options that you can choose from. But again, you have more options that you're not choosing as well, and so opportunity costs weigh into that. The application this week talked about global issues, and I see this firsthand with as much as I travel. You begin to look at companies who've expanded internationally and the challenges to make sure that they remain culturally relevant in that country, to make sure their hiring practices are okay for that country, to make sure that their connection to the government is key. I mean, in the news just today, the EU, the European Union, is on Google's back again. And so that whole connection of being an international company is just a challenge. And so the application in lesson 5 talked about those particular issues. And then in the course project, the addition this week was talking about different strategic opportunities that the company would have. And the opportunities, again, are based on what you put together as things that they could do to move forward. Now, again, as you begin to look at these, the objective this week was not to put solutions to those, but was just to list all these different opportunities that the companies had in going forward. I did notice as I was looking at some of these this week to make sure that, again, you put those together from the solutions perspective and you looked at them very objectively as you go forward. Because again, if you're presenting a problem or an issue or an opportunity to a company and you don't have potential solutions for those or things that make sense that they can rationalize, then you really stick your foot in your mouth. Trust me, I've done that before. So that is the application for lesson 5 in the course project for lesson 5. Lesson 6 coming up is really about the share economy and the discussion board. This are things like Uber and Lyft and Airbnb. I want you to really do some research on this. I did a presentation recently to a bed and breakfast association that talked about the impact of the share economy for the good for them, because it provides them additional connection to younger travelers today. You begin to think about millennials and their focus in going forward, and they are much more involved, much more engaged in the share economy than my wife and I are older individuals. So this is certainly one of those trends that can be disruptive as you go forward. And so that's what I wanted to really focus on, would be disruption that really causes a step change in the way that people move forward. So that is the discussion board for lesson 6. The application talks about CSR, are ways to really talk about social responsibility for corporations today. Perhaps you remember this from your servant leadership course when Ken Blanchard was talking with Colleen Barrett on the triple bottom line. So you'll see corporate social responsibility, you'll see triple bottom line really used kind of synonymously with things, but it really focuses on corporations have an obligation today, not just to provide shareholder wealth. And that is certainly a change from just the last 10 years. When I was at ConAgra, our stated objective, our number one stated objective, was to increase shareholder value. Well, what does that mean? That means get the stock price up. And so things are changing because, again, younger consumers are demanding more of corporations today. And so that is the application. And then this week, you're to provide some recommendations. So as you looked at the strategic alternatives for last week, you came up with some ideas, you presented some ideas, some potential solutions to a lot of the opportunities that the company had in front of them. This week, you narrow that down, and this is where the rubber hits the road. And you have to be very specific. The one thing that I noticed last week, many of you were too general in your options that you provided going forward. So if you have the opportunity to meet with senior management, you just come in there and say, we need to grow our business, but you don't say specifically how you want to do that, then they're going to look at you and go, next. And so you need to make sure that you're very, very specific on the company that you've chosen. So be specific down to the very last point on these. Okay. Hope this was kind of fun, informative, all of those things together. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Take care.